I'm back. We're going over the reproductive system. We are going to kind of start trudging along in chapter 27, which is the male reproductive system, very similar to female. So we're going to talk this time about how humans develop into either male or female in a little bit more depth. So chromosomal sex determination. All of our cells, if you're a human, you've got 23 pairs of chromosomes equaling 46 chromosomes altogether. 22 of those pairs of autosomes, meaning 44 of them, are going to be non-sex. They are going to code for things like your skin, your hair, your eyes, your toes, your tallness, and your whatever, your favorite flavor of pizza. But what's going to code for whether you are biologically male or biologically female is this one single pair of sex chromosomes, but really it's just the presence or absence of this teeny tiny little Y. Um, Generally, in most individuals, XX equals females and XY equals males. But you can also have individuals who are like XXY or XXXX or even XO, not meaning not, there's not a second one. So it's just really about the presence or absence of the Y. Males will produce males are the ones who determine whether or not their offspring are going to be male or female, not like consciously, but just biologically. When they split their XY chromosome, right? So some of those sperms are going to be carrying an X and some of those sperms are going to be carrying a Y, right? It's like a 50-50 essentially. The reason that all females can give is the X is because that's all the females have are X's. So they all go into the eggs and just kind of, that's how that goes. Biology 1 stuff. Anyway, so the sex of the child is determined by the type, meaning if it's like an X or a Y of sperm that fertilizes the egg, right? So if you get basically just if you get a Y, you're going to be male. If you don't get a Y, then you're just going to be a female. Here's a picture of that. There's sperm with an X, and that's female, and a Y, and then an X, and it's like female. Male, sorry. Okay. Prenatal hormones and sexual differentiation. So like at about 8 weeks-ish or so, like 2 months into the pregnancy, we start actually sexually differentiating. Before that, it's like not really one way or the other because we haven't really turned on any of those hormones. However, the gonads that will eventually be turning on those hormones are going to develop like a couple weeks before that, right? And they're tiny little ridges, like little, like tiny ridges. They're not quite like true gonads. And then essentially they kind of move forward and develop into the full gonads over the process. We will have in males mesonephric ducts that are going to develop into the reproductive tract. Um, and then in females, we have the paramesonephric ducts that are going to develop into the reproductive tract. And the second kind, the mesonephric ducts, are going to degenerate. There's like two tubes, right? And like, there's like two sets of tubes, right? When we're dealing with the gonads. And females are going to lose one and males are going to lose the other set. Okay? And I got a picture coming up. Let me see if I can just get there. Yep, there it is. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so female, the paramesonephric ducts, and then males, right? See, theirs are dissolving here in this picture. And then what ends up being kept is the mesonephric duct. Here we go. And then they are dissolving here in the females, right? Kind of interesting stuff. Well, we'll go over this a little bit. Okay. Yep, there it is. Okay, so on the Y, it's not even the entire Y chromosome. It's really only this like one important region called the SRY region. SRY is going to code for testes determining factor, or the TDF, which is going to be that which initiates the development of the testes from what would have originally gone right into the ovaries. The testes, because they are going to secrete that testosterone in a pretty significant way, like we said, in about like the second month or after, or like running into the third month of the pregnancy. It's also going to be secreting this Mullerian inhibiting factor, which is going to cause the degeneration of the paramesenteric ducts. And so those are some of the ones we were just talking about. And so the other thing that it does is this TDF is going to make uh, have the body commit to the mesonephric ducts so that they can develop into some of the male tracts, which we'll look at a little bit later. And then here's the pictures again, right? So remember, here's the pictures, right? So in males, we're going to kind of start dissolving these, and we're going to commit here to the mesonephric ducts. Okay, go back. If I can, let me go back. Nope. Well, let's just talk about it. Okay, so right up here is this is like the developing fetus, right? And so we're like about like meh 1.5 months along at this point. Mom's just found out she's pregnant probably. And this is what it kind of looks like on the inside. So we have like these two duct systems here in aqua blue and in purple. And then look at the size of the gonads. This is actually kind of like enormous what you're seeing here. Okay. So eventually, we're going to kind of condense this down, and these will become like the gonads proper in here. Look how tiny the kidneys are, right? Just now starting to develop. What's interesting also is we have a cloaca, which is like this fusion of, and it still exists in like say birds, for example. It's like a fusion of where like the anus and the urinary tract would all kind of dump out into the cloaca, and then all waste would be ejected from the body at that point. So it's kind of one of those like Evo Devo moments where development recapitulates the evolutionary tract, right? Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Oh, oops. So normally, if you don't have a Y, this is the commitment fate, right? So it's female. And so what's going to happen up here is these ovaries are going to come up here, and we're going to be kind of right at the fallopian tubes. And this is going to become the uterus right in here. The bladder is kind of pushed off to the side. And then down here is going to be like the vagina and the urethra and all that good stuff. And then down here, eventually the clitoris will form. And so here for males, it's a little different. So it's the fallopian tubes are kind of dissolving. And so what we end up having is like the pre-epididymis, right? Which is what this blue aqua, right, that we've been looking at is. And so the testes are going to kind of come up here, and they're going to adhere in a similar way that we would otherwise with the fallopian tubes. They're going to descend after a while. See, if you look down here, they just actually drop down into the scrotum, which is really important because it allows us to control for temperature. If it gets cold outside, we can pull them up, protect the sperm. If it gets hot, we can drop them down so that perfect temperature for that cradle of sperm is going to be always maintained, which is super duper duper important. Because unlike females, where we already have made all the eggs, males are going to be constantly renewing, right? Their manufacturing. So that manufacturing is just like really got to be very specific. Urinary bladder is up here. The urogenital sinus right here is going to eventually become the urethra. We're also ejaculating out sperm through there. And then eventually the penis it'll elongate to the penis, and we'll have the head of the penis and all that. Let me see if I can just move this up. Oh, wow, I moved it up really far. There it is. Okay. So here's birth. The development that's happened is like significant. It's great. So females, we see we've developed all the way into the uterus, ovary, uterine tube. So here's like vagina right here, urinary bladder off to the side. And see in males, it's a little bit different because we actually are kind of fusing these tubes right here into here's the prostate, and the urinary bladder is up here. And so all the sperm is going to occasionally become ejaculated through the same part of the urethra that also carries urine. So it's like double use, right? It's double use. So there is that. So epididymis is down here now connected. And so what ends up happening is we have this duct system, which we refer to as like the ductus deferens, right? So they're in here. And that's what's going to be taking the sperm on that final journey, as well as right before ejaculating, we're going to mix it with all kinds of different fluids. So fluids we'll look at from seminal vesicle and prostate, right? Some of these accessory glands. Um, Right. Okay, I think that's good. Let me see if it'll let me to. There we are. Okay. So further development of the external genitals. So as you can see, it's like basically the same thing until about 2 months, and then testosterone turns on, and if you have the receptors for it, especially, then you will develop biologically males. So the genital tubercle is going to become the head of the penis. So like the clitoris in females becomes the head of the penis in males. A pair of urogenital folds is going to enclose the male urethra, helping it to form the penis, and those would be what we would form the labia minora in females. And then the scrotum actually is the labia majora in females, but it becomes the scrotum in males, which is like very similar skin and hair distribution. So yeah, very similar structures used in different purposes for very good stuff, right? By week 12, we've definitely turned either biologically male or biologically female, and it is very distinct at this point. The male organs that develop from the same embryonic structure are homologous, right? So that we've been talking about. So penis is homologous, well, the head of the penis is homologous. So the clitoris, especially females, it's like actually just a very tiny similar structure. The scrotum is homologous to the labia majora, but it's been repurposed to house the testes as well as some muscles that are going to keep it from getting too hot, the testes from getting too hot or getting too cold, and just kind of manage that temperature for proper sperm production. And I think that's it, right? So more development. Okay, so this is an early stage undifferentiated 6 week, right? So at 8 weeks, here's where we are. So what's going to happen is we're going to have, this is going to be the developing head of the penis or clitoris. In males, this actually will seam up. Oh, right down here, as we should say. So the urethral groove is going to seam up, as you can see, all the way down, so that that's going to kind of fold over, allowing for the elongation of the penis. It has quite a few structures, which we'll look at, including the urethra. What else? Okay, so down here also beginning development of the scrotum as well. So the testes are going to be housed in there, right? So we can manage that temperature in the testes. So in the female, it's a little bit different. The clitoris is going to shrink. So we're still going to have lots of nervous endings there, but we're just not going to have the size, right? Instead, the urethral groove is actually going to remain open to have a vaginal orifice, right? So an entry point to the vagina. The urethra doesn't join the vagina, whereas in males, it's kind of like they merge a little bit earlier on, but it doesn't happen in females, right? So there's actually the 3 holes for females, right? 3, so anus, vagina, and urethra. And in males, there's 2, right? So there's the anus and then the urethral orifice. So there's 2 in males, 3 in females. Okay. So the gonads are initially going to develop, as we saw, up in the abdominal cavity and like high up and like it taking up a ton of space. And then they are going to migrate down into the pelvic cavity, either becoming ovaries or all the way down into the scrotum, eventually becoming the testes. Gubernaculum is the embryonic connective tissue cord that is going to be extending from each one of those gonads to the pelvic cavity floor. In the male, it's going to be between the internal and the external oblique muscles, and that's into the scrotum, right? There's a swelling of the scrotum. So the vaginal process is going to be a fold of the peritoneum, and it's going to extend to where the scrotum is. So the inguinal canal is going to be the pathway of the lowest resistance through the groin, and it's going to be created by the gubernaculum and the vaginal process, and is the most common site of hernia in males, and it is a serious thing. So keep an eye on hernias anywhere in the body. Get consultations right away. Please get consultations, possible repair. Descent of the testes begins as early as 6 weeks, but really we're looking into the 3rd month for the most part. In the 7th month, the testes are going to pass through the inguinal canal into the scrotum and is guided by the gubernaculum. The testes are going to be accompanied by elongating testicular arteries, which there's going to be a lot of blood processing in here, as well as the veins. Lymphatic vessels, there's going to be nerves that also run in bundles as well. Spermatic ducts, extensions of the internal abdominal oblique muscles. We'll look at some interesting muscles in there as well in a little bit. The cryptocystonism is the undescended testes, right? So it's something that is often checked for in younger babies, right? Very young toddlers. About 3% of male births, it doesn't happen all the way. After about the first year, most of it just happens on its own, so it's not usually that much of a big deal. However, it is a monitored condition by pediatricians. If not, simply testosterone injections or surgeries can actually replace those testes where they need the scrotum. Uncorrected cases, because they are unmanaged, they're not properly managing things like the temperature of the sperm and a whole bunch of other items, can lead to sterility or even testicular cancer. So it's super important that those are properly descended. Ovaries, to a lesser extent, they still stay in the abdomen for the most part, but they're not going to descend outside of the body. They lodge on the inferior brim of the lesser pelvis. Gubernaculum actually becomes this like pretty huge set of ligaments that's going to support and uphold the ovary and the uterus, and we'll talk about that more later on. Okay, well, that looks like it's it for this one, and I hope that was helpful, and I hope you guys are out there somewhere having a great day. Bye bye.